Hello folks, and welcome to another review by the Audiophile man. And what have we got for you this time around? Well, we have a puck, an accessory for your turntable. I call it a puck. It's not a stabilizer. It is not a clamp. And what you do is you put your record on your turntable platter. Then you put this little puck. I don't like the word puck. I'm going to have to try and find another name. I'll have to do a bit of Wordsworth-like contemplation, I think. Look at a few clouds, contemplate a few daffodils, and then I'll come up with a better name. But this particular one, anyway, sits over the spindle. It rests upon your vinyl record. And that's it. That's your installation. Pretty straightforward, easy to do. One or two of you out there may have a furrowed brow. What are turntable pucks? Why do they exist? Well, they exist to remove vibration, not just from the turntable's platter, but also the record itself. And that's not good for sound because vibration can turn into microphony and high frequency noise, and that interferes with sound. How? Well, it often masks subtle detail and it effectively dumbs down the music. Of late, there has been a revolution in this accessory category, lots of innovation. UK outfit Soundeck combined a stainless steel weight, for example, with a layer of sound damped steel. Another UK company, the one we're looking at today, Origin Live, introduced its revolutionary, and I consider it revolutionary, Gravity One. Unlike the Soundeck with its steel chassis, the Gravity One had almost no weight at all, at, what was it, 67 grams, I think it was, using an anti-vibration design and complementary materials. The Gravity One blew everything else away in performance terms. Shockingly, especially for Origin Live, the Gravity One was usurped by yet another UK company, Stack Audio in this case, and its very light in weight Serene puck, which used an internal silicon trampoline system to remove that vibration. Now, well, the Origin Live is back with the Gravity 2. Just a touch heavier than the one. This one weighs 70 grams. The company is keeping its design and materials cards close to its chest, and I don't really blame them for that. But what it does say is that the Gravity 2 takes the One design techniques and it adds to them. I suppose you could say the 2 is an evolutionary improvement. You get a clue about this if you look under the new, smaller footprint chassis. Only the inner part of the Gravity 1 puck touches the record surface. For the Gravity 2, well, the inner area, yes, does touch the record surface, but also the outer chassis, that also touches the record surface, and that's important, and that's all part of the job it's doing. Inside the chassis is a range of, I would say, loosely fitting materials that freely move around if you give this thing a bit of a shake. As I say, installation of the unit itself is simple. You place your vinyl record onto the platter of your turntable, you place the Gravity 2 over the turntable spindle, the Gravity 2 rests upon your record, and away you go. That's it. Question is, how does it perform? Let's have a little listen. Now, I completed the sound tests with 2 albums. Firstly, with Alan Parsons. Pull up a chair, Alan, I said, and he did, and played his Vulture Culture LP, reissued by Music on Vinyl, but originally released via Arista in 1984. I played the separate lives track, which combines lead vocal, harmonic vocal backing, a bit of synth, percussion, a whole heap of secondary percussion inserts, anything they could find in the studio, I guess, lead and bass guitars. I also turned to Doris Day, and hooray for Hollywood, and her original 1958 Columbia pressing, playing a selection of ditties such as, well, American songbook stuff really. It might as well be Spring, 3 Coins in the Fountain, and a whole heap of others. I started by utilizing the with and without test. That is, I played the track with nothing at all atop my turntable spindle, and then I placed the Gravity 2 on that spindle and I listened for any differences. The result? With the Gravity 2 on? Well, yes, there were differences. I found music was far more coherent with the Gravity 2 in place. This was down to a reduction of noise and, yes, vibration. Hence, high frequency noise no longer got in the way. It no longer filled the gaps in the music or distorted the presentation. Both mid-range and treble sounded cleaner with the Gravity 2, removing a bit of a slight edge in the upper mids, if I tell you the truth. Better clarity, improved focus from guitars and secondary percussion. Vocals provided improved diction, so I could better hear the lyrics now. The stereo image was solid and better focused. Bass had more impact, and on and on and on. The difference, frankly, was night and day. The Gravity 2 was seriously impressive in its performance. So I did a bit of comparative referencing, and I grabbed a Michell Clamp, the very first clamp. The very first of any of these accessories came from the, yet again, UK company, in this case, Michell. This clamp also removed noise and vibration, cleaning up the soundstage and tightening the bass. It did very well, although the upper mids were a little hard. In comparison, though, the Gravity 2, it made the Michell sound claustrophobic. The Gravity 2 added air and space into the mids, while bass was tightened, but it retained that essential character. Michell Clamp, well, lost a bit of character using that. I then turned to a US-based stabilizer called the ADH H4 Heavy. This is a steel item from the company HRS. The stabilizer, yes, relies on the weight of that steel chassis, but it also underneath has a damping pad on the base. I felt this unit, excellent though it is, and all of these reference materials I'm using are recommended, I hasten to add. However, compared to the Gravity 2, I felt the ADH emphasized the bass a little too much. The ADH removed vibration and noise, yes, but the balance of the presentation was too skewed to the lower frequencies. The Gravity 2 was wonderfully neutral by comparison. I stuck with HRS and the rather lighter ADL, L for light, which reduced the bass impact, which I felt was needed, but didn't quite have the same level of detail and information extraction when compared to the Origin Live Gravity 2. The Gravity 2 provided better clarity performance and more precision around the upper mids. Back to the UK and Soundeck, and that damping puck I mentioned earlier on, made from steel, has a thin layer of sound damped steel inside to lower noise, which it does very well indeed. And it did lower mid-range and treble noise. Actually though, in terms of the frequency spectrum, the best performance from the Soundeck is around the bass area. Wonderful bass precision, great low frequency impact. Even so, the Gravity 2 I felt retained the advantage, and it further enhanced treble and mid-range performance in both detail and clarity terms. Even though, as a side note, the Soundeck remains a valid choice if you don't have the cash for a Gravity 2. Next, I thought I would compare an Origin Live accessory with an Origin Live accessory, and I brought in the original Gravity, the Gravity 1. What amazed me was the performance of the Gravity 2 compared to the Gravity 1. Now, the 1 is a wonderful little accessory. I gave it a 10 out of 10 rating, partly because of the sound, but also because of that innovation. But I reviewed this accessory 5 years ago. Time has moved on. We now have the Gravity 2. How did it compare? Well, the Gravity 2 outperformed the 1 by extending the upper mid-range detail, by opening up the treble performance even further, and by combining bass impact with space around the lower frequencies. The Gravity 2 is basically a Gravity 1 and then some. That is, the Gravity 2 doesn't do things too differently from the 1, it just pushes along the same sonic path. The Gravity 1 did everything right. The Gravity 2 continues the story, but enhances it and improves upon it. In fact, the sonic improvement is large enough for me to say that if you liked and own a Gravity 1, I would consider a Gravity 2 a valid upgrade. Finally, I compared the Gravity 1 with the Stack Audio Serene. To my mind, the Gravity 1 and Serene were the top of the tree for this category of accessory. Both had their little advantages over the other. However, I tended to lean more towards the Serene. Hey, that rhymes. So, question is, which do I prefer? The Stack Audio Serene or the Origin Live Gravity 2? Well, I do prefer the Gravity 2 in terms of the upper mid-range reach and the treble performance. The Serene provided super detail and information retrieval, but there was more space from the Gravity 2 in the high frequency extremes, which allowed more subtle detail to be picked up by the ear. Noise seemed even lower, which gave those frequencies more room to maneuver. The gamut of secondary percussion used on the Alan Parsons track, for example, had more life from the Gravity 2, enjoyed greater clarity, while the background vocal harmonies enjoyed a greater emotional delivery. And I have to say, I also preferred the Gravity 2 when it came to the bass. The blend of impact, clarity, and balance gave the bass both power and a sense of character. The Serene offered a superb bass focus, but sounded a little closed in when compared to the Gravity 2. Also, reverb tails off the percussive strikes, well, they travelled a bit further from the Gravity 2, better tracking the initial effort put into that strike. So, that is basically the review of the Origin Live Gravity 2 turntable puck. Let me give you a few final thoughts. I do have some of those. I'll give you some pros and cons and a final rating. Yes, the Gravity 2 is expensive for an accessory of this type. I do realize that, but if you have the cash and turntable performance means everything to you, then you really have to pay attention to the Gravity 2. As much as I love the competing reference units in this review, and I do recommend all of them, as I say, the Origin Live Gravity 2 outperforms them all. It outperforms them all. The only competition the Gravity 2 has is its own earlier model, the Gravity 1, and the Stack Audio Serene. Even here though, the Gravity 2 sets new sonic standards, pushing further in sound quality terms. Now I have to add, when Stack Audio released its Serene record puck earlier this year, was it? It must have been quite a shock to Origin Live. The Serene was and remains something special. But you have to credit Origin Live. The company took that release on its chin, it bounced off the ropes, and it came out fighting again. To my ears, Origin Live has succeeded in taking the top spot again for this accessory category. In short, the Gravity 2 is a stunner. And that's a lot, folks. Thanks for staying to the end of this particular video. Thank you for all of your support. It is much appreciated. Down below, I'm going to put some links to the Gravity 2, of course, my own links, my Patreon page, which supports this channel. Without Patreon support, this channel is in trouble because it funds this channel, keeps it going. Also, my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join, and also my website, which you're welcome to browse. I will be back when? I'll be back probably Friday with something music-y, and then Saturday with something hi-fi newsy, and then another review with a bit of luck on the following Sunday, a week from today. It would be great to have your company during one or all of those videos. Hope to see you then. Thank you very much again for all of your help and your support. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.